Pertaining to the technical glitch, should we begin or should we wait until the glitch is
So
resolved?
let us start once again. I know you have already thought about the topic for 1 minute, but let us do it for the sake of it. So I'll repeat the instructions once again that you will get 1 minute to think, 12 minutes to speak, and then 1 minute to conclude, right? And the topic for this particular GD will be, is data a liability? Oh, sorry, is data a new oil or is it a liability? I repeat, is data a new oil or is it a liability? Your time starts now.
So the definition for data goes like something which have information and statistics. So when we have a general data or statistic about an topic or some, let's say it's for some people, so for of some company, and anything which have some personal info or information regarding that topic, so we call it a data. And nowadays, as we are moving towards globalization and as we are digitalizing, so data becomes so important thing, as in day to day life we all are we all are much means forced to data. So this data becomes a very important thing, and this data com- data can be of, means it can be new oil or it can be a liability. So talking about oil, as we can see newer models of AI is coming. So
Adding to what my panel member just said, whether data, let me first set up the floor, is data a new oil or a liability? So in this context, the comparison of data to oil is made because in this in the present scenarios in 21st century, oil is like the lifeline or the heart of the economy or e-commerce and everything around us. So whether data is going to be as important as that, or is it already as important as that, or is it a liability, or is it fooling us? That is what we are going to discuss around that. So we will make points in favor that data, that the amount of value we give to data, whether it is justified or not.
I agree to the
Thank you.
point
Well,
which
yes,
has
I
been
Thank you, believe
mentioned.
Chandan, that for your point.
And
Data is
according to me,
really, really
data is the
justified.
new oil, and data helps companies understand the company customer needs and behavior and also preferences clearly. And this just improves the product design, services, and customer satisfaction across the industries. And also, I would like to add another point that uh, businesses use data to make faster and more accurate decisions. It reduces their guesswork and it increases the efficiency and planning of the businesses.
Yes, I definitely think that data is the new oil, and means it is a very good asset and definitely not a liability. If we see the recent trend, then in last 2 to 3 years, 90% of the world data was generated, and nowadays this data could be used in a lot of purpose, from big MNCs to small MSMEs. Each and every organization collects a large amount of data, and when used in a very productive manner, like from small, like this Zomato, when we open the app, we can see that they are showing our last orders, and by this we can just analyze that how personalized they have made their data analysis and other things to drive their businesses. And Means most of the organization has a lot of analysis that do, like Pareto analysis, supply chain analysis, and all these things. This could be very done in a very better way by using means data and analyzing data in a proper way by building dashboards and other things. So data is definitely a oil, and it will means help each and every organization to run in a proper way and make them profitable.
No
Thank you.
one is
So
Then
questioning
adding to the
that we
the
know
point which
that
I have mentioned
data is
before,
oil,
data
and it
aspirants.
is
creates
really, really
economic
useful.
value, and
So
it
we do have to
also creates
understand the
new job
liability as well.
opportunities. Like
So
roles like data analysts, scientists, and cyber security experts are in high demand. So we can say that data is the new oil, and it also helps us to create new jobs and opportunities.
But
I
at the
think
same
well, we
time,
do
we'll
have to
also
look
need
at
to
the
look at
liability
the
aspect
dark
of
side
data
of
as well,
data
now,
because
because
exactly.
the amount of
all the
privacy
liabilities that
invasion
we are
and
generating,
ethical
as we know
concerns
that
that data
90%
provides,
of the data we have
which often
generated,
violates
but
individual
we
privacy,
still know that
because users
data
are
we have to
frequently
manage as
kind of
that.
unaware of
And
how their
now
data
that
is
we are
getting
moving into
collected.
the age of
As it is
AI, a lot
becoming
of
a
data
bit
Misuse
is
of
generating,
such
and it is
personal
really,
data
really
can also
difficult to
lead
manage
to
data as well.
Again,
surveillance laws
I would
and loss of
really
autonomy
appreciate
as
if
well.
one of us can speak and we can give each and everyone chance to put forth their motives, right? Just one by one, please.
Okay,
Yeah, so
so I'll
as I was
start.
saying that
As we
about
were
the
saying that
liability of
data
data.
collection is kind of, it violates individual privacy, and users are very unaware these days as to how
Mhm.
their data is getting collected and used. Misuse of any kind of personal data can also lead to like kind of surveillance or loss of autonomy. And there are cybersecurity threats and security risk because data breaches can also expose sensitive personal data, financial information of any companies. Hackers these days are just targeting large databases so as to they can increase any kind of information they have with them for financial frauds and reputational damages.
Good. Anyone?
Adding to the point what my fellow mate just made, if we remember the 2001 tech bubble burst, well, there might be a probability that we are maybe too bullish on data because just look at the crazy valuation the tech firms are in US, maybe Nvidia or the data center firms. The capex spending on them doesn't justify it now. We are just assuming that in the future the current expenditure will pay off. But is the risk worth it? Maybe the entire American economy is now is betting very big on data, and it is, and we know that the American economy is indirectly dependent. The entire world is indirectly dependent on the US economy.
Yes,
I-
definitely. All this AI that we are seeing, these every each and everything is AI and learning driven, and all use a lot of data to run their processes and other things. And if we yes, like one of my friend made some points regarding data security and all. So yeah, data means each and every aspect in this world has some positive and some negative points. So it doesn't, but it doesn't make it a liability. If we have a large amount of data, then we have to make sure that our cyber security and other things are at the optimum level so that the data is not misutilized.
I think what my
Like
colleague
our
was trying
government
to infer
recently, he
right
has
now was what my
yes.
colleague was trying to infer right now. He was trying to bring forth this very perspective that because data is now equivalent to oil itself, the importance level of data is at such a level that people are trying to hoard it. Very right. There is a rift between nations who holds the most of it, who has the most. Now, the thing that he mentioned, where the cybersecurity experts are breaching and there are security concerns regarding the companies to hold such data in place, the entire industry have been created because data holds such a value. Right now, each and every prominent tech company is invested into harboring data into themselves. Even the regulations, even the companies and all the subsidiary branches that are involved in particular thing, they are all aimed towards safeguarding user data itself, because each and every decision that you take is data driven. As of now, we live in a technological world, right? We live in an age of internet. Each and everything that you do, there is an intelligence, identity of yours which is present online. And I think that it holds such immense value for companies and other people likewise to protect it at
And I
utmost.
would like to give one example which supports that data is the new oil.
Hmm.
Um, like e-commerce platforms like Amazon and Flipkart, they use customer data for to recommend the products, and this improves user experience and increase their sales. And also, like data helps them understand the buying patterns clearly, so that they just can show the customers the recommended products. And also, banks also use transaction data to detect fraud in real time.
Yeah, I would like to
Yeah,
disagree a
and
bit
also
with
said
you,
that
I
Avinash,
would like to agree
because
with what my
see,
counterpart just said.
data, I feel
Uh,
it's you are emphasizing a lot on the importance of data, which is of course relevant, but managers use data. I feel data is more of a support thing rather than a primary thing. So categorizing it as definite oil, I think is a bit over exaggerative. So of course, data is an asset. Of course, data is needed. But at last, what managers think, what their intuition is, that comes into play a lot. So data here, it's more of a support thing where you have to pair it along with your expertise, your exposure, your intuition, and after that you make decisions. So it definitely is not oil. It's more of a support thing. So oil is used. It's a primary thing where you have to drive industries, drive machines. So yeah, that's my point.
I would like to
I
disagree
would
with
like to
you.
say that for India, data is an asset because our country has such large population, and it has helped us not only in the like startup ecosystem or AI, but it has also enabled large scale solutions like in health or educations and governance. For example, we have successfully used data in our digital public infrastructure. We have made use of UPI and DigiLocker and also Aadhaar. And all these inclusions and efficiencies have been possible only because we had relied on India's large scale population data. So I agree with my counterparts who believe that data is an oil.
But
See, I do
security
want
is
to
just one
reserve a
aspect
point
that
here.
I'm saying that it is a liability,
Data
because
in
another very
India,
huge
data
liability
was used
for
very
data
well.
is also the high cost of data management that goes. Every year we learn that Amazon and Facebook, just to keep their data, they are wasting large amounts of water. The cost include storage, cybersecurity, compliances, and poor data quality can also make any kind of data not only an asset, but it can make it a burden upon all of us.
But there is a
Well,
solution.
so
Like
in
If
the
I
end,
could,
I'll
if
say
I
since
to
could,
Elon
you
Musk
if I
that
could
was
look up,
proposing
that
if I,
this,
if
data
I could
is
throw a
similar
point,
to oil. Well,
what
of
happens
course,
when, what happens when you reach
well,
to a point that now that we're making data so much complicated, what happens if you reach to a point that the data suggests something? The data and the AI are suggesting something, but the fact
we,
that
we
it's so
are
complicated, we all have lost the reasoning that why is it like this? That the
yes, we have definitely come to a consensus
what
that
if it make what if
data
it
means
make us
data is
liable?
mostly a asset, but it has some parts of liability, but not that is a not big deal. We can manage this that by improving our cybersecurity and other things.
my point here is we are trying to liken data to oil. Through if you've read history, oil has led to war, and data will also lead to war soon. The point is it can become a liability if it's not regulated well. Regulation of data is the most important part here. You can liken it to oil, but regulation is what is like Ridhima said. India has regulated oil data to certain extent. Using DigiLocker, and Europe is a very good example. They actually held Mark Zuckerberg on trial for violating data breach laws, violating the GDPR. So data protection is what is important. Then it will be it become as or more valuable than
Yes,
oil itself.
data protection is
I
definitely
agree.
important,
Yeah,
and we have a lot
There
of
has to be
actually
a
now
balance between
actually
bills
we
of
are
national
short
parliament
on
to
security.
time, so
implement
I would
AI.
like to conclude it because it's already 13 minutes past. So the panel was mostly in the positive side of that, how data is the new oil. Most points were made on the positive side of it, the data is the new oil. We talked about how it is efficient for customer service, business governance, government, for making government. There are multiple new job opportunities in the field of data. It helps us in behavior prediction and countries and how countries are hoarding data like they used to hoard oil in earlier. And there were slightly a less number of points made in the against the topic, which include that we are too bullish on maybe in this data bubble. There might be concerns regarding privacy, misuse, and one of the strongest points was that data is not standalone, like it needs a support. But at the end, there were points made on how data should be seen in a positive light, how it should be regulated. Thank you.
All right. So thank you for your participation, everyone. It was a quite heated argument. Right. So, so before I start, I will take all the names, and I would want you all to mark this particular GD out of 10, just to understand that what was your understanding of this GD, right? So I will start with Avinash.
Sir, I would rate this GD 9 out of 10 because I
Gautam,
have a
no, no,
very
no,
had a
just
oh,
just just marking, just
okay.
marking. Gautam,
Sir, 8 out of 10.
Gautam, you didn't speak anything, I guess.
No, sir, I did, but there were
ठीक
like
है.
two people speaking. It three
हाँ.
times that happened. So
Adarsh, Rai,
I think 8.5 probably.
Shubham, Shubham was there, part. Okay, never mind. Shrey,
6.5.
getting realistic now. चलो ठीक है. Santosh,
Sir, 6.
Sayan,
Sir, I will rate it 3 because I didn't get to speak only.
no,
Whenever I tried
that is a
someone,
personal thing. No, you didn't got to speak. That does not mean GD was
yeah,
not good. Right. चलो
yeah,
ठीक
GD
है.
was good.
Nikesh.
Actually, there was a network glitch from my side, so
Okay, never mind. Spandan,
6.5.
ठीक है. Sumit,
7.
Adarsh,
Is it Nayan,
Adarsh
sir?
Rai. Uh, okay. Adarsh Rai, I have already spoken to, right? Adarsh, the other
Okay.
one, which
Yes.
0, sir.
Adarsh Nayan, yes.
Yeah, 0.
0. ठीक है. Perfect. Ridhima,
6.
all right. ठीक है. So, firstly, let me start with the feedback. I'll start with generic feedback that applies to all. Then I'll come to individualistic feedback, right? The generic feedback will be this particular GD was very much unstructured. Right. Now, I understand that by nature it was an unstructured GD, but still, if you try and if you be that person, you can still get some direction to a GD. Right. And to be honest, that onus of giving a direction to a GD is with the person who introduces the topic. In this particular case, right? So if Nikesh would have been able to sort of introduce the topic well, and should like if he would have given certain good directions to the GD so that the candidates can build upon, it would have been a better discussion, right? So firstly, this is something for every one of you. If you are someone who would want to introduce a GD topic, you have to make sure that you introduce a GD topic in a very broader sense. You don't start discussing about a GD topic from your personal opinions. That was something that Nikesh did quite well, that he introduced the topic first, like what is data, what is this. But when we introduce a topic, no, we introduce a topic from a keywords approach, right? So the topic for this particular GD was not just data. It was right is a data a oil or a liability. So if I would have introduced this GD topic along with talking about what is data or what is the understanding of data, I would have also talked about what exactly oil means over here and how does we represent liability in terms of data, right?
actually
That
I
is
was
how
going to tell that, but the next performer who started
that
after
will
me
obviously
started with
happen.
that.
Nikesh, see, if you are the first speaker in the GD, no, then there are at least 9, 10 people who are just waiting you to stop and start speaking. And if you will take a lot of time to complete your point, then no one will wait for you. Right. The only thing I will mention about Spandan is that the entry point was very wrong. Like if I have to reject someone from this particular GD, then Spandan would be the first person I will reject because he stopped Nikesh while he was speaking, right? There were certain pauses. While Nikesh was speaking, there were certain pauses, right? So if you really want to intervene in someone speaking, you should wait for that pause, that natural pause that comes in, and then you should start speaking instead of you intervening someone's continuous flow, right?
So this is something you have to make sure by practicing more and more GD, you have to adapt yourself to that natural pauses that comes while someone speaks and then try to speak, right? First thing should always be there that if you have ample amount of time, see, for example, if a GD has just started, you definitely know that you have a lot of time to speak whatever you want to speak. Then you should ideally not interrupt at least the person who is introducing the topic, right? But there could be a possibility that a person is introducing a topic for very long, and you have also realized that now redundancy is something that is coming into play. There is nothing new that is coming out of the introduction, and it is just redundant points that are being built. So then obviously you can take a place and you can start speaking, right? Then obviously what Spandan did was uh, quite wrong that you interrupted Nikesh, but when you once you mentioned that oil is a lifeline and it goes from a broad level economy to e-commerce, right? That point was fairly good, but you also mentioned a word fooling, like data is fooling, right? So this goes for everyone. I will tell you a lot of instances where the points that you mentioned were very harsh, firstly, and it was taking a very spiked side of the spectrum, right? Just there were certain point that each and every company uses data, every person uses data. See, each and every company firstly does not use data, right? There are still many companies which might be not using data, right? So instead of using these very uh, very broad, very side of the spectrum terms, you should ideally talk most of the companies or most of the people, because no one can ideally define most. What do we mean by most? Is it 90% or is it 60%? Right? We can't define that. So in that particular place, you are very safe. So use these sort of words instead of talking about each and every person uses the data and every company uses data. Right. And please don't use these terms that data is fooling everyone, right? So instead of taking harsh sides, you should take a neutral standpoint, or if you are taking a side, you should take it in a very respectful manner. And also, if you are taking a side, you have to always back it up by an example or a fact. The third problem that goes along with every one of the candidates is that the only thing that I was able, or in most of the cases, what I was able to hear statements, right? A good GD entry is structured in a manner that when there is a statement, there is also a backing to it. A backing can be by facts and figures, it can be by examples. But when you just take a entry, you just put forward certain statements, it does not have any relevance. All right. So, because that is your own assumptions, or that is your own beliefs that you are putting into play. All right. So, you should always make sure that in most of the cases, if you are mentioning something, it should be backed by a fact, a figure, a recent happening, or an example, anything for that matter, but it should have certain rationale or reasoning behind whatever you are mentioning, right? Then third point was mentioned by Abhinash, like you talked about companies, customers, then how product designing works, how data flows across company value chain, etc. Right. So before starting this pointer, because now you please understand that we were at a very broad level discussion, and from your entry, you are taking it into a very narrowed down discussion point, right? So before taking it into a such narrowed down discussion point, you should make sure that you start your pointer with a broad level thing. That okay, this is a broad level thing that I am stating over here, and now I have to narrow down it from here. So you could have said at that particular point in time that there are a lot of businesses that use data to sort of get profitability or to increase their efficiency, and then you could have talked about your point so that it sets a picture. Okay, now you are going into a area where we can talk about businesses and how businesses use data, and then you come up with your point instead of directly mentioning how a company use data for their customer, because that was one of the use case. That is not the only use cases, right? And that use case comes under the purview of business. So firstly, you will talk about a broad spectrum where if anyone else, for example, there were certain people who talked about Misho, Zomato, everything. So then how it will be showcases that ki, oh, Abhinash got into a new direction for this particular GD, and there are few people who are following that direction, right? So this is how you could have showcased your point that now I will take this particular GD into a direction of business. And see, when then after you, whoever will be speaking anything related to business, it will look like that they are following your direction, All right. So this is something that you should take. Then this was the third entry. Then fourth entry was by Sumit, right? You mentioned 90% of the data is well generated worldwide. So I was not able to understand what is that point. Matlab, firstly, you didn't mention any source to it. You just randomly mentioned that
It,
90% of data is
IB,
generated.
the source was IBM, so I need to mention the source also.
If you know the source, it is very good if you can mention it, right? Because ऐसे तो मैं भी बोल दूं 70% of the data is generated, 80% of the data is trustworthy, but
Mhm.
it should panelists should know that is it coming out of a resource or is it just a random
Relevant
figure that
source.
you are stating?
Yeah.
Yes, right. So that is something that needs to be mentioned. Then you gave example about Zomato and personalization and everything. That was a very good example, but when you mention an example, no, you have to make sure that your example is going towards a direction. ठीक है, Zomato is using data. Yes, I agree that Zomato is using data to get personalization. I also agree that. But then why it is using that data, है ना? वो जब आप बताओगे, then it will talk about कि is it a asset or is it a liability, right? What you told the candidates is that Zomato uses data to do this, but उसका outcome क्या है? That will decide that is it a asset or is it a liability. Right. So if you have completed that example, ki because of this, they are able to reduce their customer acquisition cost, or because of this, they are able to churn out more average order value, right? Because personalization is a thing now. तो ये सब चीजें आप बोलोगे तब सेंस बनाएगा कि अच्छा ठीक है, they are also having some benefits out of data, right?
Yes, got it.
Fourth point, then fifth point was there. Let me search for it. Then again, Avinash, see, please be mindful. Don't take back-to-back entries. If you know that there are other people waiting to have their first turn itself, then please don't be a person who comes into a GD and take back-to-back entries, right? And then also when you just spoke before Sumit, so you spoke, then Sumit spoke, then again you came back and put in your pointer. So if you are getting a chance, you speak a complete pointer, sit back and relax, and then start thinking. And this goes for everyone, that once you have spoken a pointer, no, then sit back and relax and think about how can I change the direction of this particular GD, instead of just arguing with someone that I don't agree with this point, or instead of just building upon someone else's point. Try to think in a direction where you can take this GD into a very new direction, and that is what Adarsh Rai did. He talked about cyber security, he talked about individual privacy, etc., etc. So at least he then came with a perspective ki bhai, liability is also something that we have to discuss. It is not just talking about the positives of the data, but also there are certain negatives associated to the data, right? But Adarsh, again, when you are talking about the risk associated to data, obviously there are certain factors that are putting into play, that are coming into play, that are mitigating the risks, right? So if I would have been in our place, instead of just mentioning about the risk, I would have also talked about that, okay, these are the risk and these are certain mitigation strategies that are coming into play to mitigate these risks, right? So you start with a standpoint, but try to come to a central point, right? It should not be that you have taken an extreme stance and now you are just sticking to it, right? So it should showcase that you are a person who analyzes the situation. What you mentioned is a fact, but if you mention a fact and then you also mention certain post actions to it, right? Then it will showcase that you have not only stated the fact, but you have analyzed the facts that you were trying to state. Then
Sir, I have a
seven,
question.
yes.
Sir, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
If we are at first we are talking about the pros, then
Huh.
afterwards can we just mention the cons as
Obviously, you can do, and that is how a wise and a rational person speaks. If you are talking about or you are analyzing upon something being a pro or a con, or a asset or a liability, then obviously you have to balance out the pros and cons. You obviously have to talk about the positives and the negatives, and then towards the end you have to take a side, right? So instead of taking side from the initial part of the discussion, initially you should bring in more and more ideas and give direction to the discussion, right? So if you will do something of this sort, it will definitely showcase that yes, you are a person who sort of holds different perspective, or who has a very analytical vision to viewing anything.
Okay, sir. Then
Right.
how will we just conclude the GD then? If we are if we are concluding it in terms
Hmm.
of pros or in terms of cons?
See, conclusion should see, because you are not concluding your own facts, right?
Hmm.
So there could be two possibilities. Either whole of the panel has come to particular discretion, right? Or either whole of the panel is still confused. So if the panel is still confused, then you can start with a neutral statement like, see, we had a very good discussion, and to be honest, there were a lot of positives and negatives that were stated. So yes, then you can add a sort of sprinkle to that particular answer, in the sense that you can obviously then mention ki, yes, because as there were a lot of negatives suggested, so there are certain key actions that has to be in place, and if those action comes to place, then obviously data can be a new oil for us, right? Is tarike se you have set a base for your conclusion, and then you can mention now mentioning what were the positives, what were the negatives, or firstly you mention all the positives and negative, and then give a concluding note that yes, because there were certain negatives, we definitely have to work upon those negatives, but if those negatives are solved in upcoming future, it is definitely a oil for us, है ना? यही तो होगा ना, एसेट है और लाइबिलिटी है, लाइबिलिटीज खत्म हो गई तो खाली एसेट,
जी
मतलब नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट फाइनेंस कॉन्सेप्ट, बट लेमैन टर्म्स में एसेट ही बचा खाली फिर, है ना?
yeah okay sir I got
राइट, राइट. सो आई वाज ऑन, मैं किसके बारे में बात कर रहा था, इफ यू कैन रिमाइंड मी?
Yes, yes, my
आदर्श,
first.
राइट,
Yes.
आदर्श, राइट, यस, 6th पॉइंट, राइट. देन 7th पॉइंट केम, जहां पे वो एक्सट्रीमिज्म शुरू हुआ, दैट वाज बाय सुमित. एवरीथिंग इज एआई और ऐसा ऐसा करके, एंड इट इज अ लाइबिलिटी, राइट? सुमित, प्लीज अंडरस्टैंड दैट इफ यू आर मेकिंग अ सेकंड एंट्री, एंड दिस गोज फॉर एवरीवन वंस अगेन, if you are making a second entry, no, please make sure that it counts. And how will you make sure it counts? You speak something else that no one has spoken till now, right? What you were trying to speak was already spoken. There was no new point that came out from that entry, right? So ideally you came, you spoke, and in your mind you, मतलब इसके बाद पता है होता क्या है? A lot of people come to us and then say कि I had a very good GD, I took 4 entries. फिर जब रिजल्ट आता है बोलते हैं यार I took 4 entries but I don't know why I was not selected. This is why you were not selected, because you took 4 entries, but those 4 entries were not counted because each and every entry was not that impactful. Right? So you have to make sure that each and every entry counts. And ideally, in a 10 to 12 minutes discussion, 3 entries are more than enough. According to me, more than 3 entries are not required if you are making an impactful entry. Right? फिर आदर्श, हाँ, फिर आदर्श यू केम, बिकॉज बहुत फिश मार्केट बन गया था, देन यू, आदर्श नयन, यू केम इन टू प्ले एंड यू सॉर्ट ऑफ पुट इन अ पॉइंट दैट कि सब लोग स्ट्रक्चर्ड मैनर में बोलते हैं, सब लोग एक एक करके बोलते हैं, बट सी ब्रदर, व्हेन यू डू फिलैंथ्रोपी ना, इट शुड स्टार्ट फ्रॉम यू. अगर आपने सबको चुप करा दिया है और एंड नाउ देयर इज साइलेंस इन द पैनल, देन यू शुड यूटिलाइज दैट कि इट शुड गो लाइक दैट कि क्यों. और सेकंड थिंग इज दैट ऐसा नहीं है कि यू आर डूइंग फिलैंथ्रोपी, वो आपने अपने लिए भी एक चांस लिया बिकॉज दिस वाज योर फर्स्ट एंट्री. सो
Yes.
now if you have made sure that everyone is on mute, everyone is silence, then use that, capitalize that opportunity and firstly speak yourself, because I clearly remember वो हुआ, सब लोग चुप भी हो गए, and there was a silence for at least 5-10 seconds. फिर जब उनको लगा कि आदर्श को बस चुप ही कराना था, कुछ बोलना नहीं था, फिर कोई आके अपना पॉइंट बोलने लगा, राइट? सो
Yes, sir.
जो आपने बोला दैट वाज वेरी मच अंडरस्टैंडेबल, बट मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ, जैसे इट इज जस्ट लाइक यू व्हेन यू आर गोइंग इन एयरक्राफ्ट, नो, कि साइड वाले की मदद से पहले अपनी मदद करो. सो when
Yes,
you
sir.
have not spoken yourself, then you will not go and help anyone else कि सबको बोलने का मौका दो, ये तो भाई, then you should be of कि मेरे को बोलने का मौका मिलना चाहिए पहले,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir.
And because you have that sort of voice modulation, because you have that sort of assertiveness, so you can take that opportunity. But I personally would have want कि आप वो opportunity थोड़ा पहले लेने का try करते, right? You
Yes.
are not that candidate जिसको बोलने में या जिसको जीडी में घुसने में थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम हो रहा है ना? आपके बोलने के बाद सब चुप हुए थे. So this is something that you have established कि when you take a entry, you can like make a space for you. So it
Yes, sir.
should be a space for you only. It should not be a space for everyone to then again start speaking. And you were just highlighted as कि अच्छा आदर्श ने सबको चुप तो कराया था, but कुछ हुआ नहीं
Nothing
उससे,
else. बिल्कुल sir.
right?
Yes, sir.
Then again, Adarsh, when you took your second entry, what you did was that आपने आदर्श राय के जो भी points थे, because someone was speaking something related to that point, and you just took a entry to explain his pointers better. कि your entry was like कि wait, let me explain what he was actually trying to mean, है ना? So in that entry also there was nothing that you mentioned, right? You spoken where Adarsh Rai was, what Adarsh Rai was trying to mention earlier. You tried to clarify that part, and then you spoke some other pointers also, but everything was repeated, right?
Oh.
There was nothing new that came into discussion from your entry. The way you spoke was very good. तो मैं कम्युनिकेशन पे पूरे मार्क्स अगर दे भी दूंगा, हो सकता है कि आपको उस बेसिस पे इस जीडी में आगे ले जाया जाए, राइट? बट एंट्री बेसिस पे यू वोंट बी सेलेक्टेड इन दिस पर्टिकुलर. सो कम्युनिकेशन के पॉइंट्स मिल, क्योंकि जीडी के की पैरामीटर्स होते हैं. इट इज नॉट जस्ट आपकी एंट्री कैसी है, इट इज अबाउट हाउ यू कैरी योरसेल्फ, आर यू लिसनिंग टू अदर्स, right? How is your communication, है ना? तो there are a lot of things that are taken into picture, and then a cumulative score के basis पे भी select or reject a candidate, right? So
Yes.
what I'm trying to say is that maybe on a cumulative basis you can pass through a GD, but on entry level basis or the content that you presented, उसमें आपके marks zero या कम ही रहेंगे.
जी सर.
right? उसके बाद 8 हो गया है. Then Avinash again came and he talked about user experiences of Amazon, Flipkart, etc., etc. But Avinash, see, if you would understand the business model of Amazon, no, like they obviously provide a lot of value to the customers through data, but they also use that data for their benefits, right? If you know that Amazon has their in-house brands also, Amazon Basics ले लो, कोई भी ले लो. So what they literally do is that they use that data, right? Then they create a very good product in a very competitive price range, right? So if you are mentioning about a company, mention both the sides of it, right? So Amazon's pointer was very good, and अगर आप चाहते तो आप सेम पॉइंटर के अंदर एसेट लाइबिलिटी दोनों साइड्स दिखा सकते थे कि हाउ दिस इज आल्सो हैम्परिंग अदर बिजनेसेस, राइट? बिकॉज any business that is listed on Amazon has the sales data, at least on their channel, for that product, right? So they can drive a lot of insights pertaining to a particular product, pertaining to a particular company from their platform only, right? So इस तरीके से you could have again balanced. मैंने आपको पहले भी जैसे बोला था, you could have balanced your opinion. Here also you could have presented a balanced opinion, right? 9th हो गया है. Then I guess Riddhima came, and matlab Riddhima, I was literally waiting ki because you have worked with data, and I wanted कि ये discussion अब थोड़े तो अलग direction में जाए, जो थोड़ा तो गया भी कि भाई it is not just about businesses, it is also about a nation as a whole. There are a lot of national reforms that are coming into play in healthcare sector, in infra sector, etc., etc. तो वो point थोड़ा elaborate हो सकता था. You could have talked about that for at least for 90 seconds, right? You could have given certain examples to back that up. तो एक एंट्री के बेसिस पे जो भी कंटेंट के पॉइंट्स मिलते वो थोड़ा सही रहता मेरे हिसाब से. मतलब it would have been valued your pointer a lot if it would have been explained in a better sense, right? वो डायरेक्शन दूसरे में गया था, बट क्योंकि इतना मीट नहीं था और लोगों के पास टू पिक अप, they eventually went down to the discussion that they were doing prior to this. That's what around क्या क्या businesses करते हैं, right?
Okay.
ऑल राइट. सो फिर एक श्रेय का भी पॉइंट आया था कि ऑयल लेड टू वॉर, सिमिलरली डेटा कैन लीड टू वॉर. तो मतलब दिस वाज अ वेरी रैंडम पॉइंटर, एंड इफ यू आर सेइंग समथिंग दिस एक्सट्रीम यू हैव टू बैक इट अप, बिकॉज ऐसा नहीं था कि ऑयल केम इनटू पिक्चर एंड देन वॉर स्टार्टेड, नाउ डेटा केम इनटू पिक्चर देन वॉर विल स्टार्ट, राइट? सो अगर आप कुछ बोलना चाह रहे हो दैट टू दिस एक्सट्रीम, प्लीज गिव पॉइंटर, मतलब प्लीज गिव कॉन्टेक्स्ट दैट व्हाट exactly you are trying to say. Right, because Shay, you would agree that this was a very extreme pointer to say.
I did give context uske baad. I said because regulation of oil was the problem. That is why there was war. And the regulation
No,
of
by
data.
context, I mean you could have given an example between, like, there are these two countries,
अच्छा.
right? जैसे अब US Venezuela भी है, between them also oil is one of the biggest thing. मतलब अब जैसे for example, I have seen certain analysis where people talk about that US के अंदर narcotics खाली वेनेजुएला से नहीं आ रहा है, right? There are other nations as well, but why they have only captured or why they are doing this with Venezuela, right? सो मेरे को लगा था कि ये पॉइंट बहुत सही डायरेक्शन में जाएगा, क्योंकि मेरे को लगा था आफ्टर दिस यू विल टॉक अबाउट यूएस वेनेजुएला थिंग,
अच्छा
बट वो
हाँ
ड्रॉप हो गया. सो व्हेन आई से कॉन्टेक्स्ट, व्हाट आई मीन इज दैट अगेन present either any fact, figure, a recent happening, or a example to it that will set context to it, right? अब आपने
I
बोला
then
कि
went
because
into
of
data
regulations,
protection.
what?
I then went into data protection regulation of the
That you
EU.
should obviously go, that you should obviously go, but वही मैं बोल रहा हूँ, don't leave a pointer half baked,
अच्छा
right? और मैं ये
understood.
भी समझ पा रहा हूँ बिकॉज यू टुक अ एंट्री टुवर्ड्स अ वेरी एंड यू वांटेड टू कंप्लीट योर पॉइंटर, है ना? ये भी हो सकता है कि ऐसा आपको लगा हो कि यार मैं जल्दी जल्दी बोल देता हूँ, कहीं ऐसा ना हो मेरा पॉइंट खत्म ही ना हो, राइट? आई
Yes, yes.
ऑब्वियसली नो दैट. सो इसके लिए मैं आप सबको एक चीज बताता हूँ. वेन एवर यू स्टार्ट अ पॉइंटर, नो, फर्स्टली आप अपने दिमाग में क्लियर रखो कि मेरे को कितने पॉइंटर बोलने हैं, राइट? एंड बीच बीच में ना आप वन वर्ड फिलर्स यूज कर सकते हो टू सिग्नल ऑल द अदर कैंडिडेट्स की बडी आई हैव मोर टू स्पीक. For example, if you are entering a GD and you have 2 pointers to speak, so before you start your entry with this point only, that to अगर आप एग्री करो, हाँ, सो मतलब आप ऑब्वियसली अगर बीच में एग्री कर रहे हो, सो यू कैन स्पीक लाइक कि yes I agree with what other discussion members have said and I have 2 pointers to speak. तो नाउ व्हेन यू हैव ऑलरेडी सेट द रूल्स फॉर अदर कि मैं 2 पॉइंट बोलने ही बोलने वाला हूं, एंड इफ समवन एल्स इंटरप्ट्स यू, देर इज नो फॉल्ट ऑफ योर्स. आप शांति से चुप हो जाओ, उस बंदे का रिजेक्शन हो चुका है वहीं पे, बिकॉज यू आर वेरी क्लियर दैट यू हैव टू स्पीक 2 pointers, राइट? नाउ as soon as you finish a point and you are ready to give an example or a context to it, there could be a possibility there can be a natural gap, क्योंकि आप एक चीज खत्म करके दूसरा शुरू कर रहे हो. So you can start it with that for this I would like to mention a pointer and then again back it up by an example. So my pointer is this, है ना? अगर आप इस सिचुएशन में हो, मैं ये नहीं बोल रहा कि आप फर्स्ट एंट्री लेते ये सब करो, मैं आपको ये बोल रहा हूँ अगर आपको ये डर है और आप इस सिचुएशन में हो कि योर एंट्री कैन बी हाईजैक्ड बाय समवन एल्स, देन यू कैन यूज दिस. इट इज नॉट दैट कि आज से आप सब लोग एंट्री बाद में शुरू कर रहे हो, पहले ये सब फ्रेजेस बोल रहे हो, राइट? सो आई हैव ऑलरेडी सेट द पर्टिकुलर सिचुएशंस वेयर यू शुड यूज दिस टैक्टिक्स. इट इज नॉट दैट इट कैन बी यूज्ड एवरीवेयर. आदर्श राय, you have a doubt?
Yeah, so because in that case, like everyone will just say that I have 3 points to say, I have 4 points to say. They'll keep on going, and if
भाई
we come
एवरीवन
into
इज नॉट विद प्रेप ना. आपको आप इस assumption में क्यों कि ये सबको पता है? आपको पता था अब से पहले, मतलब द थिंग इज दैट कि ये सब चीजें ओवर द टाइम एक इंसान सीखता है, राइट? सो अब मैंने आपको बता दिया, हो सकता है आप और 2-3 लोगों को बता दो, लेकिन सबको नहीं पता होता ये. और आप ये मत सोचो कि आप सबको पता है ये जो आपके पैनल में बैठ रहे, राइट? मतलब we have set for college GDs also, we have set for placement GDs also. So प्लीज मेक श्योर, एक तो उस टाइम इतना प्रेशर होता है ना, तो मैं आपको बता रहा हूँ अभी, लेकिन जब आप बैठोगे रियल जीडी में तब इतना प्रेशर होगा, इवन यू विल फॉरगेट टू डू दिस, और आपको होगा अरे मैं बोलू पॉइंट बोल दूं क्या, मेरा मौका आ गया ना. समझ रहे हो? वो इस तरीके से चलता है, राइट? सो दिस इज समथिंग दैट यू कैन डू. एंड व्हाट आई वुड ऑल्सो से इज दैट हमेशा ऐसा होगा नहीं कि आपके पास 2-2 3-3 पॉइंटर होंगे बोलने के लिए, राइट? अभी भी जैसे इस जीडी में भी यू जस्ट हैव डेटा सिक्योरिटी पॉइंटर, नो? तो
I have water wastage pointer
हाँ
as well.
हाँ, poor data collection. Yes, I am coming to that. It was the 11th entry, so I was just coming to that. But what
Okay.
I was trying to say is that ki all of these are tactics. First of all, it is not to be used in every scenario. Second, it is not known by everyone, right? And oil हो गया, ये हो गया. Then there was a entry by Santosh that data as a so data works as a support, but oil is a very big necessity. So मतलब यार आप खुद इमेजिन करो, मतलब ऑयल भी तो तभी कंज्यूम हो रहा है ना क्योंकि इन ट्रांसपोर्ट और ये सब चीजें एग्जिस्ट कर रही हैं. जस्ट इमेजिन कि कल से आपको मैं चीज बताता हूँ, आप ये डेटा खुद भी जाके एनालाइज करना, दैट इन इंडिया ओनली वेयर डज अ लॉट ऑफ ऑयल एंड ऑल ऑफ अ लॉट ऑफ फ्यूल गोज इनटू, राइट? मोस्टली जो फ्यूल जाता है ना वो आपके हैवी ड्यूटी व्हीकल्स में जाता है, राइट? आप समझो वो इंडस्ट्री आज कोलैप्स हो जाए, राइट? तो ऑयल फिर अपने आप में क्या करेगा, मतलब एवरीथिंग दैट एग्जिस्ट इज एग्जिस्टिंग इन अ वैल्यू चेन, राइट? क्योंकि आप ये देखो ऑयल कमोडिटीज के प्राइस ऊपर होते हैं तो आपके एंड गुड्स के प्राइसेस भी ऊपर हो जाते हैं। तो एवरीथिंग इज को रिलेटेड टू अनदर थिंग। सो दिस वाज अ वेरी वेग स्टेटमेंट टू मेक कि डेटा इज समथिंग दैट इज सपोर्टेड बाय मैनेजर्स ये वो, एंड ऑयल इज समथिंग दैट इज अ वेरी प्राइमरी थिंग। ऑयल प्राइमरी नहीं बचेगा अगर उसके अराउंड वैल्यू चेन एग्जिस्ट ना करे और कोलैप्स हो जाए, राइट? So then Adarsh made a point that yes, data जो है, मतलब that was a very good point to suggest कि डेटा किस तरीके और भी तरीके से हार्म कर सकता है, नेचर को भी कैसे इम्पैक्ट कर सकता है, क्योंकि इतने वाटर रिसोर्सेज हमारे यूज हो रहे हैं, वो सब चीजें हैं। इट वाज अ वेरी गुड पॉइंट, ऑब्वियसली इट वाज अ एडिशन टू अ डिस्कशन, राइट? उसके बाद देन देयर वाज कंक्लूजन ओनली, जो स्पंदन ने करा था, if स्पंदन is still there in the meet। हाँ, ठीक है। सो स्पंदन वही है, मतलब यू कंक्लूडेड ऑलमोस्ट ऑल ऑफ द पॉइंट्स। द ओनली थिंग दैट यू कुड हैव डन इज दैट हमेशा व्हेन यू आर कंक्लूडिंग देयर शुड बी अ कंक्लूडिंग रिमार्क, राइट? सो जैसे मैंने अभी आपको एग्जांपल दे ही दिया, जब अविनाश ने पूछा, तो व्हेन यू आर कंक्लूडिंग, नो, देयर शुड बी अ कंक्लूडिंग रिमार्क। आपने सम अप तो कर दिया जो सबने बोला है, बट देयर शुड बी अ कंक्लूडिंग रिमार्क टू इट। दैट इज व्हाई इट इज कॉल्ड अ कंक्लूजन।
Like I started with the panelist bias towards the good that data is oil.
सो दैट इज पैनल्स बायस, बट यू आर कंक्लूडिंग द जीडी, नो?
Okay, okay.
समझ रहे हो? मतलब जैसे आप कोई चैप्टर पढ़ते हो, उसका एक समरी जो सेक्शन होता है,
Like my
वो
take
ऐसा
up.
नहीं होता ना कि वो बस पूरा उसको कंप्रेस करके आपको दे देते हैं। हमेशा समरी में कुछ एडिशन होता है, ऐसा 1 और 2 लाइनर्स टेक अवे, जिससे आपको समझ आता है, अच्छा ओके, दिस वाज द कॉन्टेक्स्ट टू वट एवर हैज बीन डिलीवर्ड टिल, राइट? सो what I am trying to say is that your conclusion note should not be very much distracted from the discussion, or it should not derail whatever has been discussed till now. But obviously there should be a concluding note to it which aligns with all the pointers that has been mentioned till now. All right. Yes, Shrey.
Yeah, you mentioned during one of the feedback that arguments should be supported by facts.
Yes.
So, is our opinions not given much weightage? Because एक fact बोल के I can also make my opinion on it, no?
हाँ,
Will
it will
that
obviously, yes. So opinion will obviously be given a weightage, but अगर आप opinion इस तरीके से present करो कि मुझे तो ऐसा लगता है, तो it has no weightage. But if you will give it in a manner कि मुझे ऐसा लगता है, फिर आप बताओगे आपको कैसा लगता है, क्योंकि ये चीजें हैं, then it will be given weightage,
okay? So
right?
weighted opinion backed by fact is what.
Exactly, यार। See, opinion is the easiest thing to have and carry. सबके opinions होते हैं, right? How you will differentiate from the crowd is that how you can sound or you can make yourself sound as a rational person. You are not a person who just have opinions and biases, but also a rationalized thought process to it to back that opinion, right? Because there could be certain topics which will demand your opinion, right? तब आपको opinion देना पड़ेगा, but it should again be backed, right? For example, there could be a topic like, what do you think is branding more important or is profit more important? So it is your opinion, it is not a proven fact कि क्या important है, but again to give your opinion you have to back it up कि I personally believe that branding is more important, right? क्योंकि Parle G is also existing till now, it never sustained over their profit margins, it always focused on the branding, and that is how we recall it as a brand, right? So अब ये point sense बना रहे हैं, मैं बस ये बोल दूं, no, according to me branding is very important, I don't think so a company should run behind profits, and then I just leave. तो पैनलिस्ट क्या करेगा उसका, ठीक है भाई आपको लगता है बहुत अच्छी बात है, how should we take it?
What if it's a topic that I don't really have much facts about? तब तो
See,
opinion ही
I'll tell
देना
you
पड़ेगा.
something, मैं आपको एक चीज बताता हूँ श्रेय, आप ना एक्लेक्टिक रीडिंग चालू करो, राइट? नाउ व्हाट डू आई मीन बाय दैट, आप डिफरेंट चीजें पढ़ो, एंड कभी भी ऐसा नहीं होगा आपने जो एक चीज एक जगह पे एक चीज पढ़ी है वो कभी कहीं और रिलेट नहीं हो सकती, राइट? क्योंकि जो आपने पॉइंट बोला यूएसए और वेनेजुएला वाला टॉपिक तो यहाँ आ ही नहीं सकता था, लेकिन जो आपने पॉइंट बोला उसको अगर मैं बैक करूं तो मैं उस चीज से कर सकता हूं। तो इट इज नॉट दैट कि मेरे को कुछ पता है इससे रिलेटेड या नहीं पता, हम ट्राई कर सकते हैं ज्यादा से ज्यादा नॉलेज गेन करने का, उसके साथ हम ऑल्सो ट्राई कर सकते हैं कोरिलेशन बढ़ाने का। कोरिलेशन कैसे बढ़ेगा, जब भी आप कुछ नया पढ़ते हो ना, आप ट्राई करा करो रिलेट करने का कि क्या मैंने जो आज तक पढ़ा है या आज तक मैंने जो भी चीजें सीखी हैं इन योर ऑब्वियसली जीडीपीआई जर्नी, ये नहीं कि जो भी बचपन से सीखा है, बट इन जीडीपीआई जर्नी जो भी आप रिसेंट टाइम्स में पढ़ते जा रहे हो, क्या मैं उन चीजों को रिलेट कर पा रहा हूँ या नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ, राइट। दूसरा चीज ये है कि जब आप कोई जैसे न्यूज है, आप दिन की 2-3 न्यूज उठाओ और इंस्टेड ऑफ जस्ट नोइंग अबाउट दैट न्यूज, नो, आप उनके एनालिसिस देखो। देयर आर अ लॉट ऑफ यूट्यूब चैनल जो न्यूज एनालिसिस दिखाते हैं। तो वो जब एनालिसिस दिखाते हैं ना, तो वो उसकी हिस्ट्री भी दिखाते हैं, वो उसके प्रेजेंट इम्प्लीकेशंस भी दिखाते हैं, वो उसके फ्यूचर क्या क्या हो सकता है वो सब भी दिखाएंगे, राइट। तो इस तरीके से आपका नॉलेज बेस बहुत ब्रॉड लेवल पे जाएगा और आपको कोरिलेशन ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन आएगा कि हाउ हाउ डू वी कोरिलेट इंफॉर्मेशन टू अ पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक।
सर मैंने लिखे 4 पॉइंट थे, बट आई वाज सो एट द एंड कि आई कुड ओनली एक्सप्रेस वन
सो
पॉइंट।
सी देर आर, देखो जीडी में ना दो तरीके की प्रॉब्लम्स होती हैं। एक प्रॉब्लम क्या होती है, मतलब आदर्श नयन, डोंट माइंड, आई जस्ट टेक वन एग्जांपल। फॉर एग्जांपल, आदर्श नयन वाज अ वेरी गुड कैंडिडेट व्हेन इट कम्स टू स्पीकिंग। वो जब चाहता वो एंट्री ले सकता था, राइट। बस ही वाज नॉट देयर विद द कंटेंट, एंड नाउ देयर वर यू हु वर देयर वाज विद द कंटेंट, बट एंट्री लेने में बहुत प्रॉब्लम आ रही थी, राइट। नाउ वी हैव टू मेक श्योर कि आदर्श नयन का जो प्रॉब्लम है विद कंटेंट, we try to build upon that particular problem so that he is there with the content every time, कि he just enters a GD and bang on content रखे। आपको क्या करना है, because you already have content, then you have to work around that, how can I strategize to take entries into GD। उसके भी बहुत सारे ट्रिक्स और टैक्टिक्स होते हैं डेफिनेटली, कि मतलब बहुत सारी चीजें होती है जो हम समझ सकते हैं, सीख सकते हैं, और जब आप रिलेट करोगे तो वो जीडीज में होती हैं, राइट। जैसे एक एग्जांपल मैंने दिया, नेचुरल पॉजेस। कोई भी इंसान, अब जैसे मैं अभी एकदम अटक गया ना, तो कोई भी इंसान कंटिन्यूअसली नहीं बोल सकता। तो इफ यू फील कि ऐसा होगा, मैं आपको एक और चीज बताता हूँ। जब ये प्रॉब्लम बहुत ज्यादा होगी जीडीज में, 3-4 लोग साथ में बोलना शुरू करेंगे, राइट। सो व्हाट यू कैन आइडियली डू, यू कैन प्ले विद वॉइस मॉड्यूलेशन। जैसे 3 लोग जब साथ में बोल रहे हैं, आप थोड़ा हाई पिच पे शुरू करो, बट यू हैव टू बी माइंडफुल, जैसे ही बाकी लोग बंद करते हैं, आप अपनी पिच एकदम नॉर्मल कर दो, मेलो डाउन कर दो, राइट। एंड दूसरा चीज आप क्या कर सकते हो, आप, हो सकता है सब लोग चुप हो जाए, बट हो सकता है आपका पॉइंटर जो आप बोल रहे थे वो शुरू का 5-6 मिनट स्किप हो चुका है, राइट। तो ऑलवेज स्टार्ट योर पॉइंटर, अगर ऐसा सिनेरियो है, विद फ्रेजेस, जैसे कि आई रियली एग्री विद वॉट एवर माई को पैनलिस्ट सेड, इतने में अगर बाकी लोग चुप हो गए, फिर आप अपने पॉइंटर के साथ शुरू करो। इससे दो चीजें हुई, क्योंकि आपने तेज बोला तो बाकी लोग चुप हो जाएंगे। मतलब होता है, जो जो थोड़ा असर्टिव वे में जाता है, बाकी लोग यूजुअली चुप हो जाते हैं। जैसे इस केस में अविनाश के साथ हुआ था, आदर्श नयन के साथ हुआ था, वो थोड़ा असर्टिव टोन में जब घुसा तो बाकी लोग चुप हुए। दूसरा फायदा क्या हुआ कि मेरा पॉइंटर स्किप नहीं हुआ। पैनलिस्ट, अब क्योंकि मैं बोलना शुरू करूंगा अपना रियल पॉइंटर, तो पैनलिस्ट मेरा पॉइंटर सुनेगा। अभी तक जो भी मैंने बोला, दैट वाज जस्ट अ फिलर, राइट। एंड
हाँ
third thing that is not related to it, whenever you have a contradictory opinion to anyone, don't start with this that I don't agree with whatever this person said, yeah, this person said. What you have to say is in a very respectful sense that though whatever my co discussion partner, या जो भी आप उसको टर्म लेना चाहते हो, बोल सकते हो कि whatever my co-candidate said, I agree with that, but I also have a very different point of view। तो समझ रहे हो बात, हम वही बोल रहे हैं कि भाई तूने जो बोला है मेरे को नहीं समझ आया वो, एंड आई हैव अ वेरी डिफरेंट पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, बट वी आर नॉट स्ट्रेट अवे रिजेक्टिंग द ओपिनियन, राइट। तो ये कुछ चीजें हैं दैट यू हैव टू ऑलवेज कीप इन योर माइंड, इंस्टेड ऑफ सेइंग कि आई डोंट एग्री विद द पर्सन, यू कैन से दिस थिंग व्हाट आई मेंशन, राइट। और हैं बहुत सारी टिप्स हैं। अच्छा, एक चीज थी यार, मतलब यहाँ पे किसी ने भी डीपीडीपी के बारे में बात नहीं करी, जो 2023 में एक्ट आया था, दैट वाज आई गेस डिजिटल पर्सनल डेटा प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट। मतलब वो बहुत ज्यादा न्यूज में था एक पॉइंट पे, और अभी भी वो काफी बार न्यूज में आता रहता है, राइट। तो व्हेन यू टॉक अबाउट साइबर सिक्योरिटी एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, तो दैट वाज द फर्स्ट थिंग, बिकॉज इंडिया में एज सच कोई बहुत बड़ा एक्ट है नहीं अभी डेटा सिक्योरिटी या डेटा प्रोटेक्शन के लिए। दैट वाज समथिंग दैट यू शुड हैव एटलीस्ट डिस्कस्ड अबाउट, क्योंकि शायद
मैंने
किसी ने, तो
लिखा था सर,
आपने बोला था, आपने रशिया
मैंने
का कुछ बोला था, तो
जीडीपीआर के बारे में बोला था। आई
हाँ एग्जैक्टली
वाज गोइंग टू फर्दर टॉक अबाउट
सो
डीपीडीपी बिकॉज
यही, सो
काम
भाई
किया
व्हेन
था
यू
मैंने।
टॉक्ड अबाउट दैट, नो, सो आई वाज एक्सपेक्टिंग कि नाउ एटलीस्ट यू विल कम टू डीपीडीपी, क्योंकि वहां से शुरू करके इधर ही आओगे मेरे को समझ तो, बट देन यू लेफ्ट दैट
टाइम
पॉइंटर या।
कंस्ट्रेंट था, सो आई हैड टू कंक्लूड द पॉइंट।
बट yes still, मतलब this is how you can increase that, कि you try to increase your knowledge base, तो धीरे धीरे करके, and that will not have not happen overnightly, you have to definitely give a few months in this process। और ये आप बी स्कूल कन्वर्ट करने के बाद भी चालू रखना, बिकॉज once you enter a बी स्कूल, तब आपको असली जीडी का खेलना शुरू करोगे, राइट? क्योंकि अभी तो बहुत से कॉलेज वैट ही लेंगे, बट वंस यू एंटर योर बी स्कूल, एवरीथिंग, मोस्ट ऑफ द कंपनीज हैव जीडी एज देयर फर्स्ट प्रोसेस। मोस्ट ऑफ द कंपनीज बोल रहा हूँ, आई एम अगेन नॉट सेइंग ऑल ऑफ द कंपनीज, राइट? So this is all from my side. If there is any
Sir, I
doubt, you
have a
can.
question. Can I ask
Yes,
one question, sir?
yes, please.
Sir, the GD today, I was thinking to start the GD today, but it was already started at 40 seconds. I was taking a note of the time,
That is also a trick.
and
That is
can we
also a
do that?
trick. Yes, मतलब ideally अगर 1 मिनट का टाइम है तो 45 या 50 सेकेंड्स पे यू कैन स्टार्ट, है ना? ऐसा कोई हार्ड स्टार्ट नहीं होता कि 1 मिनट बाद ही करना है आपको। मतलब इफ देर इज अ फिनिकी पैनलिस्ट, वो ऑब्वियसली आपको बोल देगा भाई 1 मिनट इज नॉट ओवर, बट यूजुअली इतना कुछ नहीं होता कि देर इज अ प्रॉब्लम इन दैट। मतलब यू
But
कैन
sir,
स्टार्ट
10
एट फिफ्टी
सेकंड
फिफ्थ सेकेंड।
या 10 सेकंड 5 सेकंड का मतलब डिफरेंस समझ में आता है, तो 20 सेकंड पहले स्टार्ट होता है।
यार द पॉइंट इज दैट वो आज थोड़ा ग्लिच भी हुआ था ना, तो मेरे को इसलिए मैंने आज इस चीज पे बोला नहीं, बट अगर आप 20 सेकंड पहले शुरू करोगे मैं डेफिनेटली पॉइंट आउट करूंगा इस चीज को,
Yeah.
तो है ना? स्पेशली व्हेन थिंकिंग टाइम वाज 1 मिनट ओनली, तो
Hmm.
देन एवरी 10 seconds काउंट, right? So then it was not a right thing to do, but yes, if you are getting 1.5 minutes or you are getting 2 minutes to think and you are starting 10 minutes, 10 seconds prior to that, it should not be a problem.
Okay.
That is a trick most of the people use. I also used to do this. मतलब this was fixed for me कि मैं introduction तो मैं ही करूंगा, because introduction and conclusion always fetch you brownie points, right? So introduction मैं ही करूंगा, but then it is also again a very big responsibility, क्योंकि अगर आप खराब introduction करोगे तो brownie points की जगह negative points मिलेंगे, right? So if you are very sure about the topic and if you can give a very good introduction, then only go into that direction. Otherwise, just wait, absorb क्या topic है, and then probably enter at third or fourth number. Right? Yes, Adarsh.
So sir, I had this question that the whole
Huh.
reason gave this GD 0 out of 10 was because I was under this assumption that if we are going to have this sort of bickering during the GD,
Hmm.
the panelist is not even going to bother. They will simply reject the whole panel. They just move on to the next one.
Yes.
It was not once, like even after my intervention, I saw that the candidates were quarreling left and right. There was no
Hmm.
structure, like you said, to the conversation itself. So why
Right.
would just even entertain or even evaluate such a candidate when they have 100 more GDs to conduct in an essence?
See, I'll tell you, Adarsh, see, when it comes to different companies, no, they want different sort of people. For example, when it comes to sales role, usually, so sales and in sales and marketing, most of the companies will take GDs, right? So when it comes to sales role, no, there are certain companies which look for aggressive people, right? Because you have to be on the ground, you have to do real stuff. So
Yeah.
in those companies, so it depends a lot from company to company and panelist to panelist. That is the first point I would like to mention. Second thing is that you are very right that GD is the first stage gate to any selection process when it comes to placement specifically. So yes, it is mostly a filtration process. So because I had to give feedback to this panel
Mhm.
and I have to present, that is why I was trying very hard to
Yes.
at least gather upon the points which I can at least gather, right? But yes, you are very right. If there is a fish market of this sort, then there are high chances that a panel can be washed out, right?
Yes.
Means no one getting selected.
Mhm.
But I would also want to mention, if you get a opportunity, see, हम ऐसा नहीं, because in most of the cases, because placements है या selection process है, every most of the GDs will go in this direction only. अगर आप HR के GD में बैठ रहे हो, then it is a very different thing. But if you sit for a sales and marketing GD or a GD which has this sort of heat in terms of discussion, तो fish market तो बनेगा ही बनेगा. I have not seen any GD till now जहाँ fish market ना बना हो, राइट? तो इस केस में या तो आप ये कर सकते हो कि भाई ये तो पैनल रिजेक्ट होने ही वाला है, फिश मार्केट बन चुका है, तो मैं क्यों अपना टाइम वेस्ट करूं, या तो ये हो सकता है, या सेकंड थिंग ये हो सकती है, लेट मी ट्राई माय बेस्ट, मैं नहीं बोलूंगा तो भी मैं रिजेक्ट होऊंगा, मैं
Yes.
बोल दूंगा तो देयर इज एटलीस्ट अ पॉसिबिलिटी ऑफ मी गेटिंग सेलेक्टेड,
Right.
राइट? सो मैं वही होता है, मतलब देयर आर अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल एंड आई वुड से देयर आर मेनी पीपल हु give this set of rules that whenever there is a girl speaking in a GD, please don't interrupt, right? तो मेरे को ऐसा लगता है भाई, if you don't have to interrupt, don't interrupt anyone only, है ना? और अगर
Mhm.
ऐसा है कि फॉर एग्जाम्पल आई हैव बीन इनटू फ्यू पैनल्स जहां पे देयर वर 7 गर्ल्स एंड 2 to 3 बॉयज, तो अब मैं क्या करूं, फिर तो मैं बोलूंगा ही नहीं पूरे जीडी में। ऐसा तो है नहीं कि देयर वुड बी सम लेडी विच विल से कि आओ भाई आप बोल दो, बहुत हम बोल चुके हैं, राइट? तो आई
Yes.
पर्सनली, दिस इज माई पर्सनल सजेशन दैट डोंट गो विद दीज रूल्स. Either you
Mhm.
will be selected in a GD or you would be rejected in a GD. So till now, if you have not spoken any point, then it is a like do or a die situation for you. So just go all in, speak whatever you feel like as in speaks a
And
good pointer, but speak, right? And then leave it on the panelist कि वो आपको select करना चाहता है या नहीं करना चाहता. क्योंकि I personally was a very aggressive person in GDs and to be honest मेरे को ये कभी backfired नहीं करा है, right? क्योंकि
Mhm.
इस तरीके के GD में, इस तरीके के environment में you have to be a bit aggressive and assertive to make your space, वरना वही होगा कि आपको एक भी entry शायद ना मिले,
Right, sir.
right?
Another point being,
Hmm.
sir, I'm so sorry to like put it
हाँ
this way, but
हाँ
I had
please
points and I wanted to speak also, right?
speak
Because
also, yes,
this topic was somewhat of my forte. So I could
right,
have hijacked this entire conversation and I have ample of content. But the thing was that
yes,
midway during this GD, I realized this that okay, this is not going anywhere, and no matter
hmm,
whatever content is being put forth, like
hmm,
I had already decided that this for me this GD is a failed approach, right? So I
okay.
did not even bother putting up any points. So I was just correcting other people or just setting the tone of the conversation. So I think
Hmm.
that's where I did wrong. I should have still
Yes,
maintained
it
my
was wrong. So, see, you are a participant and you are not a moderator,
yes,
right?
sir.
So, this is a very wrong narrative when people talk that try to act as a moderator in a GD, है ना? Try to be the center. अरे भाई मेरा खुद का सिलेक्शन नहीं होगा, मैं क्या किसी को मॉडरेट करूंगा बैठ के, है ना? तो
Mhm.
मतलब यू हैव टू बी रियलिस्टिक भाई, मतलब इट शुड नॉट बी अ थिंग कि मेरा अपना एंट्री हुआ नहीं है एंड आई एम जस्ट मॉडरेटिंग द जीडी,
Yes, sir.
right? So if you have 2 to 3 good points, take your entry, deliver to those points, ठीक है? एंड आपका हाई चांसेस होगा कि सेलेक्ट, एंड इट इज वेरी गुड ना कि जीडी किसी भी डायरेक्शन में नहीं जा रहे, एटलीस्ट यू ट्राइड, है ना? इफ यू वांट
Mhm.
टू बी अ मॉडरेटर बाय द वर्च्यू ऑफ राइट डायरेक्शन, right?
Absolutely.
If you feel this discussion is derailing a lot or there are a lot of redundant points coming into play, you
Mhm.
pitch in and you give new direction to this GD, right? That is how you moderate a GD. It should not be that कि सब लोग बोल रहे तो let us give chance one. अगर वो unstructured GD है ना, आप चाहकर भी वो चीज
नहीं,
नहीं कर सकते that you are trying to do, right?
absolutely. Thank you,
So
sir.
this is how you have to moderate a GD. And if you had good points, no,
Mhm.
आप किसी ने कुछ भी बोला है, it does not matter because this is the point of group discussion, right? So if I have to tell you, this exercise has its origination from the boardroom discussions. And boardroom discussions का core essence ही होता है bringing in new points, brainstorming, and then coming out to a particular outcome. Right. So if you have good points and if you have new lines that you can sort of put in, so please do that.
Anyway, I had few many points. Like I was going to open with a statement that 500 million ransom was being asked by a US
Yes.
nuclear power plant facility, right? And then I was going
Yes.
to build up my point. I had this
Yes.
entire sequence, ransomware toolkit, rootkit, botnet, but
हाँ.
वही हुआ, कुछ डिलीवर ही नहीं किया बिकॉज लगा कि क्या ही करेंगे अब देखे.
तो वही तो because this was something that you had in your mind, but from now please don't think in this direction. अगर wash out हो भी रहा है तो
जी
कोई
सर.
बात नहीं, you give your best.
Absolutely, sir.
Right, you give
Understood.
your best. हो सकता है you become the highlight of that discussion and
Mhm.
आपको panelist select कर ले, right? मैंने जैसे आपको बोला कि it is not just about how group is performing as a whole or what is the discussion going on. It is about a lot of things that we also don't know, right? It is completely dependent on college to college or company to company, right? So what we have to make sure is that we sort of tick mark on a lot of things. मैं एटलीस्ट बोल के अपना कम्युनिकेशन तो दिखा सकता हूँ ना कि आई एम अ गुड कम्युनिकेटर. मैं ये तो दिखा सकता हूँ आई हैव वेल थॉट अपॉन दिस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक, राइट? सो एटलीस्ट शोकेस वट एवर वी कैन डू एंड देन अगेन let the panelists decide,
बिल्कुल
right?
Sir,
सर.
I've seen boardroom meetings turn worse than fish market.
Or
Uh,
absolutely it does, and those boardroom meetings are the ones जो literally best of the best outcomes निकाल के लाती हैं, right?
Why?
तो
Because there is polarized views, but you've been mentioning
exactly.
since the start कि have a neutral stance on the topic. So I'm confused. Should
See,
I?
please don't be confused. I am not saying have a neutral stance on a topic. I am saying when you are mentioning something extreme, try to mellow down the tone. देर इज डिफरेंस बिटवीन टू थिंग्स, है ना। मैं किसी को मतलब डोंट माइंड, बट अगर मैं कैंडिड एग्जांपल दूं, मैं किसी को सीधा बोल दूं अरे भाई तू बहुत पागल है, मेरे को तेरे से बात नहीं करनी, है ना। यू कैन ऑल्सो मेलो डाउन द सेम थिंग कि यार हमारी वाइब्स ना ज्यादा मैच नहीं होती, आई डोंट थिंक सो वी अलाइन ऑन अ सेम मेंटल कैपेबिलिटी, सो मे बी वी शुड नॉट टॉक। बोल तो मैं सेम ही बात रहा हूँ ना, बट टोन और जितना एक्सट्रीम
हाँ
लेवल पे जा रहा है चीज, उसमें डिफरेंस है। So that is, I have never said you don't take sides. That is what you are supposed to do. But you should not go into a very extreme direction.
yeah, okay, understood.
Yes. Wait, Gautam, you have a question, right?
Yes, sir. Sir, जैसे इस GD में I took 3 entries, but they went completely unnoticed because other candidates were speaking. So,
Hmm.
sir, how do I come back from this? Like, what can I do to make myself stand out? कि हाँ मैं भी like था उसमें. Because I had a lot of points, but I couldn't
Yes.
just mention any of them because other
देखो इस
candidates were
इस केस में
speaking.
ना दो ही चीजें हो सकती है। एक तो कि आप
Yes,
सारी टिप्स एंड ट्रिक्स पहले समझो कि अगर मैं इस कैटेगरी का बच्चा हूं, देन व्हाट आर द टिप्स एंड ट्रिक्स आई कैन यूज टू मेक माय प्लेस इन दैट पर्टिकुलर जीडी, राइट। कुछ मैंने बताई भी हैं, और भी बहुत सारी
yes, sir.
होती हैं, है ना। दूसरा क्या है, यू प्रैक्टिस मोर एंड मोर जीडीज, राइट।
Okay,
और
sir.
तीसरा
This is
क्या है कि
actually my second GD only.
यस, तो तीसरा क्या है कि आप फिर
Uh,
पैनलिस्ट की दया की वेट कर सकते हो, क्योंकि कई बार पैनलिस्ट दया खा के बोलते हैं कि हे गौतम, यू वर नॉट एबल टू स्पीक एनी पॉइंट, सो इफ यू वुड वांट टू
sir.
स्पीक समथिंग, या फिर वो आपको प्रोबेबली कंक्लूड करने का अपॉर्चुनिटी दे देंगे कि गौतम यू आर नॉट एबल टू स्पीक समथिंग, सो इफ यू वुड वांट टू स्पीक समथिंग। तो मैंने ऐसे थर्ड केसेस में भी लोग सेलेक्ट होते देखे हैं जीडी में, क्योंकि वो
Hmm.
कंक्लूजन बहुत अच्छा देते हैं, क्योंकि उनके पास कंटेंट बहुत अच्छा था, राइट। पहली तो
Yes,
तीन
sir.
चीजें तो ये हो गई, और चौथी चीज ये है कि इन ऑनलाइन जीडी ये थोड़ा मुश्किल होता है टू क्रिएट स्पेस फॉर यू, बिकॉज समझ रहे हो, हेयर आपकी वॉइस ही सारा काम कर रही है, राइट। बट वेन यू गो
Yes,
टू
sir.
ऑफलाइन जीडी, जो मोस्ट ऑफ द कंपनीज ऑफलाइन ही करवाएंगी आपका प्रोसेस, तो जब आप ऑफलाइन जीडी के लिए जाओगे तब चीजें बहुत अलग होंगी, राइट। तो दिस इज व्हाट आई वुड सजेस्ट कि जब आप कोई कॉलेज ज्वाइन करते हो या कुछ भी करते हो ना, ट्राई टू ऑल्सो बी पार्ट ऑफ अ इकोसिस्टम जहां आप ऑनलाइन ऑफलाइन जीडीज कुछ प्रैक्टिस कर पाओ। वो बहुत अलग एनवायरनमेंट होता है, राइट। लेकिन कंटेंट और डिलीवरी उसमें भी आपको चाहिए, है ना।
यस सर। सर इसी सेम कंडीशन में जैसे अगर 2 कैंडिडेट्स बोल रहे हैं आई एम वन ऑफ देम, तो शुड
हम्म।
आई रेज माय वॉइस कि एक ज्यादा लेवल तक बढ़ा दूं या फिर
नहीं
शुड
नहीं,
आई
ज्यादा
जस्ट।
लेवल पे ऐसा चिल्लाना विल्लाना नहीं है,
हाँ हाँ।
है ना। चिल्लाना विल्लाना नहीं है, बट ऑब्वियसली आप थोड़ा, मतलब यार ये ना बहुत वो है कि अब विराट कोहली पूछे कि मैं कवर ड्राइव इस एंगल पे मारूं या एंगल थोड़ा शिफ्ट करूं, तो समझ रहे हो,
ओके
वॉइस का डेसिबल मैं नहीं डिसाइड कर सकता, इट इज डिपेंडिंग ऑन अ लॉट ऑफ थिंग्स दैट आर हैपनिंग इन अ जीडी, राइट।
ओके
बट आप ऑब्वियसली नेक्स्ट जीडी में ट्राई करके देख सकते हो,
ओके ओके।
है ना। और अगर आपको ऐसा लगता है कि भाई ये तो मेरे लिए बहुत मुश्किल है, मतलब कई होते हैं ऐसे बच्चे कि आई हैव प्रैक्टिस 20-25 जीडीज, सब टिप्स एंड ट्रिक्स भी कर लिया, बट मैं नहीं हूं इस तरीके का इंसान कि मैं दूसरों को कट करूं और एंट्री लूं, तो देन यू प्लान आउट अ वेरी गुड स्ट्रैटेजी टू गिव अ गुड इंट्रोडक्शन। आपका कंटेंट ऑन
ओके
पॉइंट होना चाहिए और अच्छे अच्छे इंट्रोडक्शन देने पे फोकस करो, राइट। एक बार तो आप
ओके
हाईलाइट हो
ओके।
गए ही होगे।
सर इंट्रोडक्शन की भी प्लानिंग थी बट अगेन वो जो कैंडिडेट था उन्होंने 20 सेकंड्स पहले ही बोल दिया, तो सो दैट्स व्हाई जस्ट
तो ये भी
नेक्स्ट टाइम आई
है, मतलब
ट्राई।
ये भी है ट्रिक, तो आप मतलब 20 सेकंड पहले नहीं, बट एज आई मेंशन आप थोड़ा पहले ही
हम्म
शुरू कर सकते हो, यू डोंट हैव टू वेट एग्जैक्टली, बिकॉज देयर विल बी मेनी पीपल ना जो ऐसे घड़ी ही देख रहे होंगे कि होते ही मैं बोलना, तो आप थोड़ा पहले
हम्म।
बोलना शुरू कर सकते हो।
ओके
सर
थैंक यू सर।
इंट्रोडक्शन में स्टैंड लेना चाहिए बिकॉज आई हैव हर्ड लॉट ऑफ पीपल एडवाइज मी नॉट टू टेक अ स्टैंड ड्यूरिंग इंट्रोड्यूसिंग द टॉपिक.
हाँ, दैट तो आई वुड ऑल्सो सजेस्ट कि यू शुड आइडियली नॉट टेक अ स्टैंस, बट इफ यू वुड वांट टू टेक अ स्टैंस इट शुड बी लिटरली टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ योर इंट्रोडक्शन वेयर यू हैव सेट अ ब्रॉडर स्पेस, क्योंकि आपको नहीं पता आपको शायद नेक्स्ट चांस मिले ना मिले जीडी में, तो ऑब्वियसली यू कैन टेक अ स्टैंस इफ यू वांट टू, एंड इफ यू हैव अ वेरी गुड रैशनल बिहाइंड इट, बट इट शुड कम आफ्टर अ वेरी न्यूट्रल एंड अ ब्रॉड इंट्रोडक्शन. For example, firstly, let me take this opportunity to introduce the topic or to talk about the topic to the panel, and post that while ending your introduction, you can say ki, now just to present my personal views or just to present my personal take on the topic, फिर आप अपना stance लेके उसको खत्म कर सकते हो. तो technically आपने introduction plus पहली entry कर दिया, but वो एक ही entry count होगा.
I had a question. अगर हम like we introduce and we conclude तो वो सोचेंगे नहीं like it's he's taking the lazy way out.
कभी नहीं करना चाहिए आपको, कभी मतलब नहीं, क्या इंट्रोडक्शन और कंक्लूड.
Like हाँ if you
नहीं,
do
दोनों
that?
चीजें तो आपको कभी ही नहीं करनी चाहिए, या तो आप इंट्रोडक्शन दो या आप कंक्लूजन दो, दोनों चीजें तो आपको कभी ही नहीं करनी चाहिए, राइट?
Okay.
Either you introduce and take 1 to 2 entries, or either you conclude and before that you take 1 or 2 entries. It should never be a point कि आप conclusion भी कर रहे हो और आप introduction भी कर रहे हो, right? So this is also you have to figure out by practicing GDs that are you a introduction person or are you a conclusion person, right? क्योंकि मेरे को ऐसा लगता था कि अगर मैं इंट्रोड्यूस करूंगा तो मैं अपना पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू ज्यादा रख पाऊंगा, इंस्टेड ऑफ गिविंग पॉइंटर्स जो सबने डिस्कस करे हैं, राइट? और फिर कंक्लूजन के लिए आपको फिर सब कुछ लिखना भी पड़ेगा, सब कुछ देखना भी पड़ेगा। मतलब इफ यू आस्क मी हाउ आई पार्टिसिपेटेड इन द जीडीज, आई वाज वेरी श्योर इन मोस्ट ऑफ द जीडीज आई विल गिव द इंट्रोडक्शन। उसके बाद में आराम से बैठता था, दो चार लोगों को जो बोलना है बोलने दो, आई डोंट रियली बॉदर्ड कि क्या बोल रहे हैं। मेरे को ये था कि नाउ व्हाट एल्स आई कैन स्पीक दैट टेक्स दिस इंटरव्यू इनटू अ वेरी डिफरेंट डायरेक्शन। वो करके देन आई अगेन स्टेप्ड बैक, फिर जिसको बोलना है दो चार पॉइंट बोलो इधर उधर जो बोलना है, फिर आई टेक अ एंट्री, फिर मैं एक और ऐसा पॉइंटर बोलूंगा दैट अगेन टेक्स दैट डिस्कशन इनटू अ वेरी न्यू डायरेक्शन, राइट? और वो करना इतना मुश्किल नहीं है, यू जस्ट हैव टू, जैसे मैंने पहले बोला, कोरिलेट डिफरेंट टॉपिक्स एंड थिंक इन डिफरेंट डायरेक्शंस, दैट इज ओनली व्हाट यू हैव टू डू, राइट?
Yeah. If you could give an example कि कैसे you would introduce while being neutral and then quietly
दिस
slip your,
पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक,
yeah, quietly slip in your
So,
point
so,
of view.
so what I would have done is that firstly, as someone introduced data, I would have introduced that what exactly data means, right? And उसने बहुत बोला personally, वो मैं simple बोलता, data is sort of any information that we can capture and use in future, right? Simple रखना है, ज्यादा उसको वो नहीं करना। उसके बाद मैं बोलता कि because this topic talks about data as a oil, a new oil or a liability, right? So what new oil mean over here is that they would want to listen about that, is it a asset for the economy, or is it a asset for everyone who is using data, right? Or is it probability a liability that we are carrying over us and it can impact us in a negative sense? तो इससे मैंने क्या करा, डेटा के बारे में बताया, एसेट वाला डायरेक्शन भी खोला, लाइबिलिटी वाला डायरेक्शन भी खोला, एंड पोस्ट दैट फिर मैं बोलता कि नाउ माय पर्सनल ओपिनियन टू दिस वुड बी, फिर मैं एक ओपिनियन लेके
Okay, okay.
खत्म कर देता, राइट? या माय पर्सनल टेक टू दिस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक वुड बी, और मैं स्टार्ट करता तो पॉजिटिव से ही स्टार्ट करता। मेरे पास चाहे नेगेटिव्स है रेडी, बट फिर भी मैं स्टार्ट करता तो पॉजिटिव से ही करता, बिकॉज नो वन वांट टू हियर अ नेगेटिव टेक इन द वेरी वेरी स्टार्ट ऑफ अ जीडी।
But you can't then elaborate on it, right? Because you would have already
बाय,
taken, मतलब आप बहुत टाइम ले चुके हो already, right? You have introduced the topic and everything, then you give a point, then
वो आपको ऐसा लगता है, बट इफ यू आर मेकिंग अ गुड पॉइंट नो, तो आपको इतनी, मतलब मैं वही बोल रहा हूँ, इट इज अ लॉट अबाउट ग्रुप डायनामिक्स। अगर आप अच्छा बोल रहे हो, अगर आप ऑन पॉइंट बोल, जैसे जब तक आदर्श नयन बोल रहा था ना, किसी ने उसको इंटरप्ट नहीं करा था, चाहे वो सेम पॉइंट रिपीट कर रहा था, बट जब तक वो बोल रहा था किसी ने उसको इंटरप्ट नहीं करा।
हाँ,
तो इट इज अबाउट हाउ यू प्रेजेंट योर पॉइंटर्स, इट इज अबाउट हाउ योर ग्रुप डायनामिक्स वर्क, एंड आप कितने असर्टिव बन पाते, राइट? जो
okay.
फर्स्ट आप ही थे ना जिसने सेकंड पॉइंटर बोला था इंटरप्ट करते
हाँ
हुए,
हाँ
वो
हाँ,
आप इसलिए कर पाए क्योंकि उसने आपको मौका दिया। अगर आदर्श ने ये जीडी इंट्रोड्यूस करा होता,
मैं नहीं टोकता उसे।
है ना, आप नहीं टोकते,
मैं नहीं
बिकॉज इतना, अगर कोई इंसान इतना फ्लो में बात कर रहा है तो मैं क्यों उसको रोकूंगा,
टोकता। हाँ,
राइट? तो ऐसा कभी नहीं होगा, एंड स्पेशली जितना इनिशियल पार्ट ऑफ जीडी होगा ना, तो मैं आपको बताता हूँ जीडी साइकी कैसे वर्क करती है। इनिशियल पार्ट ऑफ द जीडी में हमेशा इंसान सोचता है व्हाट आई कैन स्पीक, व्हाट न्यू आई कैन टॉक अबाउट। टुवर्ड्स एंड वो सोचता है मेरी एंट्री नहीं आई है, अब मैं बस एंट्री लेके बोलूं, मैं एंट्री लेके बोलूं, तो समझ रहे हो? तो वो साइकी बहुत चेंज होती है। तो इनिशियली कोई आपको इंटरप्ट इतना इजीली नहीं करता, वो सब चीजें टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ जीडी ज्यादा शुरू होंगी,
ओके।
राइट? और इंट्रोडक्शन में तो आई हैव नेवर सीन पीपल interrupting anyone. So I think so all the doubts are cleared, and it was a very good session. It was a very good session, matlab, uh, and a lot of discussion pointers. So it would be good if you all reflect on these pointers before participating into a next mock GD, right? तभी फायदा है कि if you inculcate the feedbacks that are given to you, and then you sort of come for a next GD, right?
Sir,
चलो,
can we have few WET sessions if possible, like in the next?
W80.
Yeah.
हाँ, we can definitely plan. मतलब I was planning to take some group exercises because group exercises बहुत अच्छा exposure देती हैं। GDs are something जो बहुत common हो गया, but group exercises will give you a lot of exposure in terms of expanding your thinking, right?
Yes, sir.
So we are planning some group exercises also, and maybe we can have a one or two of that, so we can have, right? So we just have to plan it accordingly. So yes, ठीक है.
Thank you, sir.
Cool. So if
So
Sumit, you are there, yes.
एक क्वेश्चन था. So basically in my second point I think I dropped off in between in network की वजह से. उस पे आपका कुछ, क्योंकि मैंने 2 पॉइंट्स दिए, दोनों अगेंस्ट थे, उसमें कोई दिक्कत नहीं होती है ना?
अगेंस्ट भाई इफ द टॉपिक ओनली टॉक्स अबाउट कि पॉजिटिव है कि नेगेटिव है, तो आप एक साइड तो लोगे ही लोगे, राइट? तो अगेंस्ट बोलने में कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. ऐसा नहीं है कि वो ये बोलेंगे भाई कितना खराब आदमी है, सब लोग तो पॉजिटिव बोल रहे हैं, आदर्श राय तो तब से नेगेटिव ही बोल रहे हैं, कितना पेसिमिस्टिक आदमी है. ऐसा कोई नहीं बोलेगा भाई. यू आर जस्ट अ एनालिटिकल पर्सन. व्हाट यू आर डूइंग इज यू आर प्लेइंग अ डेविल्स एडवोकेट, right? When everyone is there to see a rosy picture of data, you are playing a devil's advocate over there. You are trying to analyze it from a different point of view. तो उसमें कुछ गलत नहीं है किसी भी सेंस में, right? ठीक है.